The war on masculinity doesn't end when boys leave their school days behind, unfortunately. It's become a constant barrage throughout their lives. In the early days of visual media, for example, if you saw a father on television, he tended to be portrayed as wise and strong. These were considered some of the defining aspects of his masculinity, wisdom and strength. He was a rock to turn to in times of difficulty, someone who was responsible, stoic, self-sacrificial, and dutiful. He was a protector, a provider, a leader. He was someone to be respected. At times it would even be heroic, and these were the aspirational role models for boys in those days. They were masculine, and that masculinity was to be respected. Throughout the decades, however, this portrayal of fathers and men in general on screen has gradually morphed into that of a bumbling, infantile buffoon. It was already visible in the 1980s, but certainly from the early 1990s onwards, Homer Simpson became the archetype upon which television fathers would thereafter be modeled. He was a low IQ idiot who was lazy, immature, and who was constantly making bad choices to the consternation of a long-suffering and far more sensible wife. Think of any American TV show with a family since that decade, especially in the comedy genre since 1990, and almost certainly the father would fit that infantile, idiotic, man-child kind of mold. Whether it be Malcolm in the Middle, Everybody Loves Raymond, Family Guy, but just any show since that decade. All of them. As author Warren Farrell put it, if an alien came to Earth and watched American television today, they would conclude that child development was simply about overcoming the stupidity of the dad. In advertisements, it's the same story. It's a common trope now for men to be the butt of the jokes in commercials in a way that would never be sanctioned in reverse. Typically, adverts will show men being ignorant about the benefits of a product, while a woman in the know needs to tend to step in and show him the way. Men will always be creating the problems that a woman will then use the advertised product to solve, often with an eye roll or a shake of the head at his idiocy. Mueller Yogurts ran a campaign over a number of years where the punchline simply involved a glamorous woman yelling fat-free, causing some startled and hapless man to fall over, get hit on the head with a ball, lose his clothes, or get splattered with sand or clay, and generally just being made a fool of. And generally, the postmodern age has decided that men and masculinity itself is there to be demeaned and made a fool of, and to be undercut at all times. In movies, Hollywood is making a concerted attempt to demean masculinity in this way as well, destroying male heroes and making them look foolish and toxic, normally at the hands of a superior female with no character flaws whatsoever, who's always right, who's always in control, can do no wrong, who never loses, and who is basically a girl boss. While men, and even heroic men, have become increasingly portrayed as less stoic, more frail, more weak on screen, female characters have gone in the opposite direction, always being portrayed as quote-unquote a strong female lead, always being portrayed as in control, always in charge, and always needing to put toxic men in their place. Whether it be Luke Skywalker and Han Solo being shown the way in Star Wars by Rey, who seems to know it all and can do it all without any training whatsoever, Admiral Purplehair putting Poe in his place and his toxic masculinity, Thor being trumped by Lady Thor, Loki being trumped by the female Loki, James Bond being replaced as 007 by a woman. Hollywood is intent on tearing down traditional masculinity, traditional masculine heroes, and projecting the image that to be a man is something lesser, something problematic, something to be made fun of, something to be fixed, something to be feminized. Indeed, the message is sent that men are not to be leaders but are to be led by women. They're not fit to lead because of their toxicity. Indeed, if men in general could just stop being so masculine, the problems of the world would all magically disappear and a feminine utopia would then emerge. During COVID-19, the media began running stories that said that male leadership was primarily to blame for everything and that men in general were making the problem worse, and that if only there were more female leaders in charge, the world would be in a much better place. Politico ran a story at the end of 2020 with the headline, "2020 has been miserable. Is extreme masculinity to blame?" Men are also being blamed for the perceived climate change problem at the moment. In July 2021, the Independent and Guardian newspapers ran stories headlined, 5 ways men contribute more to the climate crisis than women, and men cause more climate emissions than women. The Guardian declared, we need more female leaders in the fight against climate change. Vogue said, why we desperately need more female leaders making the decisions on climate change. So men are always the problem today. Women are always the solution. Men are idiots, buffoons, they're dangerous, they're toxic, they're evil, whereas women are always all that's wise and good. That's the message that's being given today. In March 2020, United Nations women shared a graphic of what their ideal global utopia of the future would look like. They called it Equiterra, and a close inspection of their idealized utopia shows that women run this idealized society and hold all of the key positions of leadership. If you look through the windows of the science lab, it's all women. In the top right-hand corner, a woman is chairing a company meeting. The bottom left-hand corner has a female boss being pronounced CEO of the year. Indeed, there doesn't appear to be male leadership represented anywhere in this image. Along the riverbank, there's a recycling plant where toxic masculinity is being dumped. UN Women also tweeted a list of 10 things in December 2020 that they felt could help to create this ideal society of the future. They recommended amplifying feminist voices and ending toxic masculinity. So more femininity and less masculinity is always the answer in this postmodern age. Now, the further that people delve into this left trench and the more of this ethos that they imbibe, the more their fear and hatred for men begins to swell up in their hearts. And as a result, some truly venomous and hateful things can begin to come out of their mouths. On Twitter in 2021, the hashtag #KillAllMen began trending. Around the same time, so did the hashtag #MEnAreTrash. This is truly venomous and hateful stuff. The Huffington Post reported on the phenomenon at the time, saying, if you listen carefully on any given day, you'll hear the words "men are trash" like a gentle hum vibrating across the globe, an anthem, if you will. The phrase "men are trash" can actually be directly translated into masculinity is in transition and it's not moving beep fast enough. When women across the land cry out "men are trash," what it really means is your ideas of manhood are no longer fit for purpose. In other words, men are still being too masculine and too manly and just getting in the way of our ideal feminist utopia. They need to hurry up and become more like women, more feminized, so we can get on with creating our paradise. This is the ethos in which we currently live. Everything feminine is great and wonderful. Everything masculine is evil and wrong and bad and toxic.
We need to kill all men. I am sick of being a baby factory that produces more men that will just, in the future, subjugate me. So the only answer to that is to kill male babies and just kill any man that you see, like in the streets, like any swing chick, just kill him. Because we want the species to go on, but we want it only to go on with women in it. So that's what we have to do. That's the only way to keep the human race going, is with just women.
Now, when you get this message hammered into you night and day from your earliest years that your essential nature is a toxic and unwanted hindrance to the world, do you think men fare well out of that message? Do you think that that's a message which is going to produce healthy and happy men in your society, or maybe not so much? 73% of people who go missing are men. 87% of those sleeping rough are men. 95% of those in prison are men. Men are 3 times more likely to have alcohol problems today compared to women, and 3 times more likely to have drug problems compared to women. 75% of suicides are men, and for men under 50, suicide is the biggest cause of death. In short, men are struggling. In 2012, the Samaritans looked into why men were committing suicide in such large numbers and discovered they were 10 times more likely to do so if they had a lower socioeconomic status. They discovered that, quote, the feminization of employment is leading some men to feel like they have less of a purpose in the professional world. So men are traditionally protectors and providers, and if they can't provide, they begin to feel worthless. They begin to ask, what am I even for? What am I good for? And then feminism comes along and compounds that message by saying, you're not good for anything. We don't need you. We don't want you. You're toxic. You're evil. You're trash. And you deserve to die. So is it any wonder that men are beginning to struggle? Now, in general, men are responding to this message in the feminist age in 3 ways, and this kind of conforms to a general pattern. Whenever there's a social trend, you will always get these 3 things happening. You always get a small percentage that goes countercultural and goes in the complete opposite direction. You get a percentage that drops out altogether, but then the majority will try to adapt and fit in with whatever the current social message and mores are. And this is what's happening with men right now. You have a percentage of men who are going countercultural, they're going in the complete opposite direction, and they're responding to the feminization of culture with a hyper-masculinity. They're doubling down on their roles as protectors and providers, which means getting bulked up, going to the gym 5 times a week, starting 10 businesses, earning 6 figures, earning lots of money. You also have the men going their own way group. This is like the dropout group. These are the ones who've decided that if nothing they do is right, and if they can't please women, no matter how hard they try, and if they're unwanted and unneeded, then they're just going to drop out of dating and marriage, and they'll go it alone without women. But these are both relatively small percentages. The third group is the biggest, and this is the group who are generally trying to respond to all of this by becoming more feminine. They're trying to fit in with the current social atmosphere and direction. In general, men are trying to adapt to feminization. And in fact, a really interesting thing is happening in this feminine age. As a whole, men's testosterone levels are physically dropping by about 1% per year, and have been since at least the 1980s when they began measuring this. And this means that men today have between 25 to 50% less testosterone in their bodies as their fathers and grandfathers did. In practical terms, the average young man in 1985 could apply 117 pounds of force with a right-hand grip. By 2016, the average young man could only apply 98 pounds of force. Forbes says, what's happening to men physically dovetails with a broader story of social transformation. The economy is shifting away from jobs that favor men like manufacturing and towards sectors dominated by women, which kind of feeds back into this idea that men are beginning to feel worthless in a feminized working environment. But what's also interesting is that scientists are not really exactly sure why testosterone is dropping like this. There are lots of theories around obesity and levels of activity and also chemicals in today's world which are getting into men's system and affecting their testosterone levels. But I would also postulate that there's some kind of spiritual element to this as well. I think way back when I did Know Your Enemy, I've got a vague memory of this. I remember the occultist saying that we were entering into the age of the moon goddess. And I wonder if God is allowing the world to explore the feminization of culture so that in the end, it can see that it's not the answer. It's not going to create this imagined utopia that the far leftists and the postmodernists and the feminists think it will. Because you see, it really isn't the answer. As I said in the last episode, we need masculinity more than this current generation right now really understands. One day they will understand, but when that realization is going to happen, I can't say. Men are indeed natural inventors, builders, explorers, fixers, leaders, warriors, protectors, providers, and at their best, men are self-sacrificial heroes who will give every ounce of their being and even their lives to protect and care for the ones they love. And in truth, we need more of this in society. We need more masculinity. We need more good men. We'll explain more of why that is in the next episode, but both sexes know this. Both sexes know that masculinity is good. And you'll often find that it's women today who actually lament its disappearance the most. Many women say that they miss the old chivalry, the days when a man would typically take the lead, would hold doors open for a woman, would take his jacket off to keep his wife warm, would sleep on the side of the bed nearest the door to be the first in line of defense against intruders, would give up his seat on public transport, would walk on the curbside of the pavement to shield her from puddle splashes or veering cars. They miss the days when men were strong and could lead and could provide. They missed the type of chivalry, for example, which meant that when the Titanic sank, 75% of the survivors were women because the men willingly sacrificed their spaces in the lifeboats to save their wives and kids. They knew that they were going to die, but they did it willingly to save their wives and their families. But do you know why this kind of chivalry died? Because feminists killed it. They told men that they didn't want it anymore, that it was demeaning, that it was toxic. They didn't want it, so men simply stopped. And now that they've stopped though, women are regretting it and they want it back again. I read an article in The Guardian recently where a woman was complaining that men were not approaching her in the workplace anymore. But why have they stopped approaching women in the workplace? Well, because the feminist movements have told men that if they even look at a woman for too long in the workplace, he will lose his job and have his life ruined for sexual harassment.
Feminism is killing this country.
Can you be more specific?
Feminism has taught us to hate men and to fear men because capital profits off of my fear as a woman. If I'm afraid of men, they can make a profit off of that. There's a gender war because men are the underdogs right now. Men are the ones being told you're feared, you're wrong, everything you do is wrong, go make money, don't show emotion, BBP. Women are making a rise to the top. We've over-feminized so much and included women so much, which is great. But we don't have to tear men down to include women.
There was a whole string of videos that I planned to play at this point where women are expressing regret at the disappearance of chivalry and masculinity. They're looking around wishing for a husband, realizing that they bought the feminist lie for far too long, that they're a quote-unquote strong independent woman who didn't need a man, and that it was degrading for them to want one to lean upon for protection and provision, because now they're looking for one. They're looking for a man's strength, they're looking for his provision, looking for his leadership, looking for the home life that only he can provide, wishing they had a man to fix their screen doors and to shovel their gravel and to put their trash out, and realizing they perhaps left it a bit too long in some circumstances, and the chances of having the thing that they really always wanted deep down is now getting slim. A husband, a family, and a warm, cozy, secure home life. But unfortunately, there's just so much swearing in all of these videos that I'm gonna have to leave them out. But this is why I would say, firstly, to young Christian women, I'm gonna talk to you first. Do not buy this feminist lie. Men are not your enemy. Masculinity is not to be feared or despised. God created masculinity to bless your life, just as he made femininity to bless men's lives. Men and women are not in competition. We are not enemies here. We are partners. We are teammates. Both men and women have equal value. We both have strengths, but they're different strengths. And when we combine those complementary strengths through Jesus to serve and love one another, we can improve and bless each other's lives immeasurably. Honor and respect the good men in your life, and they will literally work themselves to the bone for you. They will sacrifice everything for you. They will literally die for you, I promise you. And then to young Christian men, I would say, do not fall in with the feminization of culture either. Don't buy these lies that you're not needed and not wanted and that you're toxic and evil and poisonous. Even if people don't realize it right now, your masculinity is good and it's so needed. So be a good one, be a good man. That is your goal in life going forward. Be the men that God created you to be. Be the countercultural group here. Work on your character, work on your personal development, work on your relationship with God above all things. That's the most important thing. Learn how to lead. Become strong in body and in spirit, which means going to the gym, but it also means going to church. Learn how to be a provider. Work hard and be disciplined in all of these things and in all the things that you put your hand to. And most of all, put Jesus at the center of your life. And I promise you, there will come a time when society will begin to value all of those things again. It might not be today and it might not be tomorrow, but the time will come when people realize that masculinity is good and it's needed. Listen to me. You are not trash. You are not toxic. You can make a positive impact in this world as you embrace your God-given nature. Make Jesus your Lord. It's the most important thing. Follow his leading for your life, but know that you matter. You are worth something. Listen to me here. God did not make a mistake when he made you. God did not make a mistake when he made you. Some are already regretting the denigration of men even as we speak. For others, it's going to take a bit longer, but there will come a day when all of this cultural flux passes and when people will begin to value men and masculinity again. But in the next episode, we're going to look at where we can expect society to go in the meantime as we continue exalting only one and denigrating only other. But I'll say it one more time. Listen to me, those people in the back, I'm going to say it one more time. Both masculinity and femininity is good. It's good. And we need both of them for a happy, healthy, prosperous society.